Deepak ji, over to you for initial comments.
Yes, good morning, Mr. R.S. Sharma. Thank you for joining us this morning, sir. Really honored. As such, I'm really honored to have your presence today. This is one of those changed environments where physical conferences have now turned digital. Hello to all my other colleagues who are on camera right now. Some of the speakers are off camera because of the limitations of the cameras that can be turned on. So welcome to you all. We all are in unprecedented times, difficulties of different nature, which we have never faced or seen. There are many kind of crises, and I list them out, they just don't end. But I think with all this, what is happening is the way things we have been performing in the past are going to change. The entire business modeling, the way we consume, the way we have acted on certain situations, everything is actually going to change. There's going to be a new normal. I don't know what the new normal is, but one thing is certain, that the way we consume physical things are going to be rooted through a digital platform. And that's something which is something which we have seen and which is growing. With the social distancing norms and limited mobility of consumers, telecom suddenly is in vogue, and digital services are something that I look forward to. And I don't think it is possible for us to perform anything if we do not have this backbone infrastructure that one is trying to talk about. Prime Minister's dream of digital India 5 years back, 6 years back, that he put forward, seems to be what is helping us today. Otherwise, so many people sitting and working from home, it would have been clearly not possible. Today, I don't get telephone signals into my house because the builder built a bomb shelter and not a house. So signals don't permeate the walls, but data, and I have not felt for a moment that I am not connected with people. So therefore, there are opportunities that are changing things. I don't think offices are going to ever work at 100% capacity going forward. There is going to be a new norm. Government meetings, even Prime Minister's review programs which are happening, I'm sitting in this chair and having those with him. So therefore, you can understand how much a change that has come through as we are talking. A lot of services physical services have been stopped, whether it was banks, whether it was telecom services, insurance companies, and so on and so forth. Even restaurants today don't allow you food because of social distancing norms, but you get everything that you want to eat at home. So with this change, one thing is certain, that we are going to be more digital than before and much sooner than we anticipated. There will be challenges as we go along, sir, and these challenges are something that will come along and we will have to look at. Certain governments are not ready completely with the citizen services. There are language issues when you make these services available. There will be issues of infrastructure, of government services, when there will be sudden surge in using of these services by people. And there will be a lot of mental model shift that has to be brought about. A lot of people as to why would they want to have this major shift in the way they have lived their life, especially the people much older in age would have these questions, not to say the younger ones as well. So with this, I would say a broader question that is in my mind, these are the things that I'm looking for inputs from this panel. With these few words, back to you, Bala. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Sood. Again, on behalf of ASSOCHAM and the Digital Communications Committee, a warm welcome to all the attendees, and a very, very warm welcome to our Honorable Shri R.S. Sharma ji, and all the distinguished speakers who are going to be participating in this webinar today. I guess, Deepak, you have quite aptly summarized why this seminar or webinar is very relevant, and the context of digital you've already stated so very clearly. It is a fact that when this sector entered the lockdown, it was an unprecedented situation. None of us knew where we would end up. We always thought it was going to be a short duration of lockdown, but obviously got extended for all the right reasons, that the government decided to keep people safe and allow for the time to come in for handling such an unprecedented crisis. And in this regard, I would say that the fact that the telecom networks has held up is also because of a lot of forward-looking policies of the government and some very, very forward-looking regulations of the TRAI, and also a lot of hard work, I would say, of the entire ecosystem. A lot of them who are represented on the panel today. So you have people from the technology space, people from the OTT space. We've got people who provide the networks, the operator community, as well as you have the people who are providing the infrastructure and the fiber. I think the fact that some of us as operators saw in a space of 1 week, the first 1 week of lockdown, we saw the increase that took place in the data and the voice traffic equal to what we saw in the year before. That was a kind of dramatic shift that happened in the traffic. And the fact that we were able to hold our own is a testimony of the fact that in the last 4 to 5 years, the policies of the government have worked, the policies of the overall regulations of the TRAI have worked, and that the effort which has been put in modernizing the networks as well as the business modeling that has taken place to make digital happen in India has overall worked. Are there challenges? I think there are. Is there a financial overhang and some stress in the sector? I think there is still. But I think between the regulator, and we have Mr. Sharma, and I'll introduce him a little bit later before his session, the architect of NDCP, in my view, apart from many other things that he has done. But NDCP, again, people will look at as a landmark document that got created, no different than Aadhaar, that he was the architect of many years before. That will hopefully, keep us in good stead and be the beacon for the issues to be sorted out. There are issues, but I think overall the opportunities are such that I'm sure that we will make huge progress in that. And today we'll have the opportunity to have a broad spread of speakers. What we will do is we'll give a few minutes to each of the speakers initially to express their views, and after that request our honorable chairman sir to give his brief to us and his vision for the future with us, and then have a few Q&As so that the chairman and other panelists can answer them. And so without much ado, I will start the panel discussion by first calling Sarda to come and give his opening comments. I'll just take a minute to introduce him. He is the CTO of Wireless Solutions at Huawei Telecoms Company Limited. He has over a decade-long association with Huawei, and he's also been very, very responsible for driving the wireless solutions vertical at Huawei. He has over 2 decades of experience in telecom, during which he has worked across multiple areas of technical solutions, market dynamics, RF engineering, and technology. Over to you, Radhe.
Thanks, Mr. Balaji. I hope my slides are visible.
Yeah.
Okay. So good morning, everybody, and thanks again to Mr. Balaji and ASSOCHAM for inviting me to share my views on this webinar. The topic of today's webinar, digital, the next revolution, is indeed very pertinent, and also it aligns with Huawei's vision. Huawei's vision is to bring digital to every person, home and organization for a fully connected, intelligent world. And we believe that 5G is the cornerstone of the digital revolution. On this note, I would like to share my views in the form of a few slides. So to start with, indeed, Mr. Balaji just talked about NDCP. So I start with the fact that NDCP and National Broadband Mission has already set an excellent ground for the digitally empowered economy and society. And I recap some of the key goals of NDCP. So goals like 50 Mbps universal broadband connectivity and 50% household with broadband access will enrich digital lives and empower digital homes. And the goals like 5 billion connected IoT ecosystem and accelerating transition to Industry 4.0 will inspire digital society and digital industry. And of course, the goals like training 1 million people for new age skills and creating 4 million additional jobs in digital communication sector will drive the digital economy. So in summary, of course, we can clearly understand that cutting edge ICT is the road to achieve these goals. In this page, I share the estimated industry's market size of some of the key segments by 2022. Indeed, we all are aware that the recent pandemic has severely impacted the economy, and digital can reduce the impact of the pandemic on economy and can catalyze the growth in each one of these sectors, and thus will be a key catalyst to the traditional economy. One of the well-known examples of digital that we can see in the context of India is the Janadhan Aadhaar and Mobile, or the JAM vision, which basically served as a bedrock for many of the digital initiatives being taken in the country in last few years, as well as during the pandemic period. Now, as we move forward, the synergy of 5G, AI, cloud, and IoT will enable new transformational capabilities. Each one of these technologies like 5G, AI, cloud, and IoT are general purpose technologies. They are similar to the technologies like steam engine, electricity, and computing. And something which is hugely positive is happening now is that all of these technologies, 5G, AI, cloud, and IoT, they are maturing at the same time. So together, they can basically bring a lot of powerful transformations across different industries verticals. Let me share some of the typical example of 5G use cases to enable digital transformation for India. Of course, the first one, the fixed wireless access will enable broadband access to households. Cloud-based services such as Cloud PC can enable on-demand powerful computer to be made available to every Indian at a marginal cost compared to a real hardware-based PC. Then there are several digital sky-based use cases such as drone-based use cases, and they are applicable in various domains. If I take example of agriculture, it will increase the productivity of food grains. Then there is of course remote screening use case, which is very applicable in post-pandemic scenario today to do the temperature screening of 200 plus people in just about a minute's time in a free flow manner without stopping the people. Telemedicine will enable access to medication to the people in remote areas. And then there are other sectors such as smart manufacturing, broadcast, and smart cities, etc. So these and many more use cases developing through 5G hackathon platform will accelerate the digital transformation of India. Let me just share some of the key 5G enablers and the support required from India perspective. And of course, many of them are well known and has been discussed in past as well. The first one is indeed 5G spectrum, and we recommend that every operator should get about 80 to 100 megahertz spectrum in mid-band. And considering 4 operators in India, the requirement is 320 to 400 megahertz of mid-band spectrum. Indeed, we all know that the amount of spectrum that is available today is less, and therefore there is a need to explore more spectrum in mid-band. The second key point is mobile backhaul, and we all know that in India, majority of the towers are connected by microwave. So we believe that E-band spectrum need to be released together with the C-band spectrum to enable the 5G in India. Indeed, we think that E-band will be an indispensable part of 5G solution from India market perspective. The next key point that I would like to share is from site infrastructure perspective. In addition to macro site, in 5G will also require pole site and indoor sites. And indeed, 5G is going to operate in higher bands. Even the low band of 5G, which is the 3.5 gigahertz, is higher than all the bands in 4G. So from that perspective, we need more infrastructure for site, and we recommend to have a policy in place to leverage street furnitures through a single window of approval process. Also, we also recommend to allow IBS active sharing through IP1. And last but not the least, of course, collaboration is a key. So collaboration among multiple stakeholders, which includes government, industry, standards bodies, and academia, working together is key to bring 5G to reality. Now, if we look at the difference between 4G and 5G, we understand that 5G serves industries and industry bodies, and therefore the participation of industry and industry bodies becomes more and more important to maximize the socio-economic benefits from 5G. With these key requirements being addressed, we can leverage 5G and cutting-edge ICT to make digital truly the next big revolution. With that, I conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Radhe, for that. Very good overview. And now I move over to Mr. Randeep Raina. Randeep is leading the technology, strategy, and direction for Nokia in India. As a technology and a business leader, he has over 23 years of experience, and he's again led across functions and activities, sales, account management, operations, and business development. And he has successfully led the technology strategy and improved the business profitability and sales revenue of the companies that he's worked with in his previous stints. And his experience in handling large geographically dispersed projects makes him uniquely adept at giving his perspectives today in this webinar on digital, the next journey. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Balaji and Deepak, for this opportunity, and good morning, all. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good, thank you. I think the topic that has been chosen today, digital, the new revolution, is quite apt, from the situation standpoint. And while the whole world is kind of tackling and managing this pandemic, we believe that in this unprecedented times, virtual has literally become the new real, and physical is truly becoming new digital in a sense, and both technically and literally. And what we believe at Nokia is that the shift from digital, the shift to digital and convergence of all these technologies is now looking to be a very, very clear permanent thing going forward. We have also seen that telcos and its associated ecosystem partners like OEMs, infrastructure providers, consumers, retails, they played a very important role in addressing this connectivity needs and facilitating this transition of remote working, virtual presence, and the environment that we are currently living in for the last 3 months. And this is really a high time that this telco sector is looked at enabling the digital societies of the future, and that is clearly evident from the symbolic discoveries that we have seen in the last 3 to 4 months while addressing this pandemic. Balaji, Deepak, and Radhe already talked about some of the key levers that industry will have to go through, especially 5G as a new digital transformation. But I do believe that there is a significant attention that is needed to ensure that future societies are served with quality telecom infrastructure and networks, and regulatory environment in this case will have to play a very, very important role in making telecom networks better and healthier. Having said so, India already has a good level of penetration in terms of its reach and capability, and sustainability over time has also seen its ups and downs. And sustainability and growth, they all go hand in hand. And if we have to really see how that can be balanced, there are several factors that probably will have to get infused in the next few months to ensure that there is a good and a clear regulatory framework to enable that, which could involve industry and government collaborations, innovation at a new peak because that is needed in the marketplace, healthy competition, and infrastructure creation to really tackle the needs of the societies and needs of the citizens in terms of handling such unprecedented times. And we have seen that time and again, we have highlighted that government policies should orient more towards making telecommunication sector as the biggest catalyst for Indian economy development, and the newly created Atmanirbhar Bharat. I think that's something that I will talk through in my next 4 or 5 minutes of my discussion in terms of how that can be infused and how we would look forward to TRAI as a catalyst and as a real needle mover in terms of giving some light touch regulatory framework so that there is a good take of all the things that we need in the future. I think especially post-COVID 19 scenarios, most of the nations have realized that the criticality of the network is much more important, and there has to have a sustainable telecom infrastructure to meet such unprecedented times. And for example, several countries across the world at government levels have investments or have made announcements in investing to boost the fixed networks, infrastructure in the post-COVID situation. And also many countries, of course, have looked at allocating affordable and in some countries also free 5G spectrum to support the bandwidth needs that are needed in a country which has a vast geography to cover and a demography to cover like India. I think we should probably take some learnings from those markets and enable our industries out here to leverage and maximize the potential that 5G can bring, for example, in terms of connecting societies and industries. Of course, Balaji talked about the Indian telecom sector, which has been plagued by some financial challenges over a period of time, but it has shown its resilience fully to handle such crises at times. And in fact, government has also supported in terms of granting them more spectrum if need be, because of the surge in the traffic that we saw post-lockdown and still going on. So while there is essentially these financial challenges will probably be resolved at the earliest, but it's also critical for India not to fall behind other nations who are now innovating, adopting new technologies quickly. For example, 5G. Now, incidentally, India is a home to largest number of startups who are eager to innovate and have the capability to grow beyond a certain point in time and flourish, given that they have a light touch regulatory environment, especially for IoT, Industry 4.0 domains, which is where we see a lot of automation and a need of modernization is already there. So we look forward to TRAI as a body to take initiative in this area and probably come up with some light touch regulatory framework around domains like Industry 4.0, private networks, spectrum for industries, which can be enabled through the telecom operators, among many other areas which needs a lot of modernization. While having said that, it's also important for an Atmanirbhar Bharat that the manufacturing of exports of both products and services are integrated with India with global manufacturing supply chains. We are enthused at Nokia by the recent government's announcement on manufacturing incentives aimed at exports, which is a very good thing. And it's also important that such incentives are aligned towards benefit of both attracting global manufacturing as well as the supply chains from elsewhere, including the domestic, supply chain partners. And in this case, for example, Nokia has already been a big contributor in terms of exporting almost €1 billion worth of equipment to other markets and have that foreign exchange benefits to India. And we look forward for TRAI to take some lead in correcting some of the anomalies that we see currently in this run up to Atmanirbhar Bharat, where there is a good thrust on domestic manufacturing. At the same time, the balance has to be maintained on the both sides. And since we know that post-COVID...
Randeep, you'll have to wrap up soon.
Yeah, sure. Sure, Balaji. So since we know post-COVID-19 situation is not going to be the same, so digital transformation will be enabled by technologies for sure, and it will accelerate economy. I have three main areas which I want to talk about where I believe some acceleration in terms of regulatory framework and a little bit of acceleration and push towards the industry is needed. And it needs regulatory intervention for sure. So first one is, if we have to prepare India for 5G, then we have to ensure that there is a timely access to alternate backhaul, which is E-band, or penetrating fiber to its current level of penetration. The second one is probably enabling our industries to 4.0. India has a good success with the consumer business, but industries are up there who need modernization. So Industry 4.0 enablement has to happen, and we need some regulatory intervention in terms of how to either have telcos enable the Industry 4.0 or have something more in specific to industries in terms of spectrum allocation to the industries for modernizing their assets. And third, of course, we have seen that there is a need post-COVID of having a robust public safety and disaster recovery networks in India, which will take care of the exigencies and emergencies that we have seen through. And since India has a broad demography to cover, it's important that the poorest of the poor gets the services at the affordable cost, and also that the public safety measures and the disaster recoveries are ensured to those level of societies. But while I believe that India has the potential to lead this digital revolution,
I think you'll have to wrap up. Yeah,
what we need is just speed, and all that is needed is a light regulatory touch and a framework to enable all the things that I talked about. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Randeep. Very good insights. With this, now I'll move on to the other sector that is so very critical for us, the IP, the infrastructure providers. We have Mr. Manoj Kumar Singh. Manoj is the CTO of Indus Towers. He heads technology, regulatory, and sustainability function. Has been with the company since inception, the largest tower company in the world. I would think after the merger that will happen with Bharti Infratel soon. He brings in over 28 years of experience in multiple domains, and large project execution has been his forte. Very well known in our sector. Over to you, Manoj, for you to share your thoughts.
So thank you, Balaji, and good morning, Sharma sir, and good morning to all. So I would actually begin with the topic today. So the topic was digital, the next revolution. So I was just thinking, because it is already a revolution. So during this pandemic time, this is proved. So I was just, so telecom has never been more relevant than they are today, connecting families and communicating with each other and keeping the businesses alive. And we actually got considered as essential and critical as water, as air during this pandemic time. And what has actually happened is that digital revolution, this pandemic has actually accelerated, and actually it is proof that digitization is inevitable. So digital fitness and adoption has now become a matter of survival. It is not a choice now. And over and above, so very recently, the telecom, who stood very bold and strong and keeping billions of lives connected to each other in the recent disaster, which is Amphan in West Bengal and Nisarga in Mumbai. So we had been meeting very frequently, and we actually proved that the infrastructure providers are the backbone of this whole ecosystem. And we were the field guys of this telecom, and we maintained the network with before any other utilities comes up. So that we have proven our sustenance. Several businesses are taking the virtual route to get back on track, and this has actually significantly increased the data demand. Even during the pandemic times, we ably managed the work from home by managing 4 lakh, 5 lakh plus towers and 20 lakh plus BTSs, which actually supported the ecosystem to support the capacity addition of 30 to 40%. And in turn, making all sectors, not only the essential sector, but all sectors, education, virtual classroom, medical, legal, virtual courts, etc., connected. So I would like to quote the very recent Supreme Court comment that virtual courts has been in the recent pandemic time, almost 3,000 lawyers appeared in the hearing through video conferencing, and actually the efficiency was much more than the conventional way. And in light of that, the Deputy CM Karnataka actually requested telecom operators to come and provide more towers into the court. So actually now we have been getting realized by all others that this is the backbone infrastructure for the country to grow. In light of all this, the billion-dollar question comes to every mind is, will India become a 5 trillion economy in 2025? There are two contrarian views. One, the optimistic, and of course, definitely the other, the pessimistic. Both views grounded in the reality. The optimistic view is that growth will be propelled higher by rise of the middle class, young demographics, and changes in globalization. But the pessimistic outlook is that poor physical and human infrastructure will transform India's demographic divided into disaster. So India is taking a leading revolution with speed and scale. Telecom sector is playing a very vital role in next revolution of digital transformation. Today, if you see the cab drivers in Mumbai and farmers in Punjab, all uses this digital platform to manage their day-to-day routine work, including the fishermen at the southmost coast, etc., etc. So, as the digital revolution continues to unfold, it relies on artificial intelligence, virtual and augmented reality, and the robotic as a three pillar. And the telecom industry is the epicenter of all these three. The Internet of Things is expected to be the next big thing in the mobile ecosystem and a key driver for future growth in a cellular based economy. Numerous services are planned on the IoT over cellular network, including utility meters, vending machines, automotive applications, healthcare, etc., etc. This makes it imperative for telecom companies to deliver infrastructure with adequate bandwidth, coverage, and speed, which to fully embrace the digitization and enable the real-time applications. However, the digital revolution is best spelled out with the blazing fast 5G network. The 5G technology will bring in definitely a paradigm shift in the digital revolution and unlock the potential of connected devices. As the face of the telecom industry changes, the stroke of a few days, several telecom companies exploring diversified business, which is considered as allied business like smart cities, etc., moving from mere a communication provider to a value-added digital service provider. The open digital innovation by the government has been leveraged by the startup community as well, and they have become the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. Indian retail broking, e-commerce, food delivery, etc., are competing as equal with the largest platform in the world. By designing unique and frugal solutions that are being incessantly consumed by the local market, we are actually showing our competence to serve the world, not limited to India. So, if the digital revolution, if India is unique, it ensures not only the connected, but also those who are not connected also getting benefited, like common service centers located in various parts of the country providing entitlement to beneficiaries like soil health cards, farmer card, Pradhan Mantri certification, etc., and pension certificates in assisted mode. So the future digital revolution, if we see that in our brains, is definitely
Manoj,
too many
you'll have to
there.
wrap up.
Yeah. So if we see the backbone to this digital, so in the paucity of time, what I would like to emphasize in 1 minute or less than a minute, that in the complete whole ecosystem, you see that the backbone is the digital infrastructure. And the one recommendation which probably, sir, which we want as IP infrastructure would like to place is the enhancement of the scope of the infrastructure, because we are the field guys and we have to do the entire ready-to-lit infrastructure, which can be leveraged by many other service providers and provide essential services and value-added services to the countries and the citizens in by and large. So this is from my side, and thank you very much for inviting me here. Thank you, Balaji.
Thank you very much, Manoj. Thank you, Manoj. Much appreciated. We were talking about the startup ecosystem, Sharma ji, and we have someone who's joining from one of the 3 hubs, which is Israel, and we have Eitan, who is going to speak to us now. He's a founder and CEO with over 17 years of experience in internet, video, and telecom startups and public companies. He, of course, handled multiple roles from global marketing, sales. He's a product innovator and, of course, a strategy developer. And right now, he is the CEO of Vimmi Communications, a high-quality, future-proof online video platform. So over to you, Eitan.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me for this panel and for this meeting. I'm in the media and telecom industry for more than 20 years, and first time I traveled to India for work was in 1996. So I have many, many years of experience in the Indian market. Probably is the country that I visited, the most in my career. A few words about Vimmi. We are a technology company developing solutions for online video streaming. We have our own video CDN technology, which is a patented technology. But in addition, we are adding on top of the video streaming platform, variety of monetization capabilities for content providers, telcos, and video creators, such as the ability to monetize their video through subscription or transactional VODs, but also the ability to use video for shopping, for distributing content, using video for marketing, and providing tools for consumers to shop online inside a dedicated video application. I just read, yesterday, and really shocking data that video streaming worldwide, due to COVID, obviously, during the first and second quarter of the year, has increased by 55% compared to last year. So this is an amazing. Usually, the industry is growing at a pace of around 15% year over year. But we are talking now about close to 60% growth in video. We all understand why. Obviously, more people are at home, more people are using video. And this is not calculating the Zoom event, right? These are only video streaming, the use of a video streaming platform. And what happens on the businesses and SMBs as well is that because people are at home and artists are at home and businesses are not opening, there is a big trend now to use digital and internet, and video is a very important component out of that for the transition of businesses to online. Video is a very compelling way of conveying people. It's a very comfort experience for getting product feedback and to have those shopping experiences as part of the apps. And this is what we are focusing now. We did a transition of our development efforts towards more also the SMBs and even the SOHO customers and individual creators. We are providing them platforms so they can stream content, can be live and VOD, but they can also integrate shopping layers on top of the video, which helps them with their businesses. Now, in order to succeed with video, a variety of things should happen also on the network side. The network should support bidirectional video, and most of the networks of the world today are struggling with the growth of video. Obviously, according to Cisco, 82% of the of the internet is going to be video in a couple of years. And there is this creates a lot of burden on the video because video is a very high bandwidth consuming format of media. The way to resolve, and this is why this is how networks are trying to develop innovation around video streaming, and this is definitely towards the 5G, is the ability of the network to manage and process video at the edge. So all the issue of edge computing, or what's known as multi-access edge computing, and the virtualization of the edge, moving those big data centers to the edge to more and more location. This will enable to reduce latency from clients to networks, and it will enable to reduce the loads in the core of the backbone of the networks in order to process video, storage of video, caching, and accelerating video application to end users. There is a trend definitely in India, which is happening before 5G even, to deploy more and more servers and compute resources at the edge. This is definitely happening on the mobile front, but also on the ISP front. And this is through the Vimmi technology, we are able to cache and process the content at the edge. This is one of the patents that we have. So it's a network of a big, let's say, we call it grid computing, which is a network of many POPs. It can be a big POP or even small POP or even on the client device. And our ability to manage and process and share compute resources between edges in order to optimize and streamline the video experience to end users. So in terms of the network needs to undergo this revolution of deploying the compute resources at the edge. Definitely 5G will accelerate everything because the 5G Note Bs will support those compute resources. But before 5G, and what's known in India also, it's 4.5G, this will definitely help accelerating and improving video connectivity, definitely to the rural areas and to remote locations. Today, even with few hundreds of kilobits per second, we can stream good quality of video and have a solid experiences. So we are traditionally operating in the media and entertainment sector, and we work with OTT partners that can be on the content side or OTT that comes from the telco side. But what's important, and definitely what we see now, is a big demand in India for helping businesses succeed with video, providing them live tools so they can go and engage directly with end users through the internet, and provide them the ability to engage with users through chat, Q&A, and also providing them the full shopping experience where they can get a purchase. Vimmi is collecting the payment and providing this payment to the business, and the business is taking care of the fulfillment. So this is just the beginning of this era, I believe. It will require updates in the networks to support the scale of the video, because the video now goes, as opposed to streaming, where video goes to one place to millions of users. Now, when we work with small creators and businesses, the video travels from the venues or from the home up to the network, and this creates a substantial burden on the network. And these are the things that we work with local carriers, definitely in India and all around the world, in order to help.
Eitan, you'll have to wrap up.
In order to help and support those small businesses, artists that are now at home, they don't have live shows. We see a lot of demand for video, and this will create, I think, a new era of monetizing video over the web. So this was my wrap up. Thank you again for inviting me. Any questions? I'm happy to follow up later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eitan. And now over to our last industry speaker, Jared Dougherty, who heads the external affairs and regulatory affairs for AT&T Communications and Warner Media in the Asia Pacific. He has a team that is based in India as well and across the region that he supports. And of course, he's a veteran in the sector, and he's been working with the company's global media and communications business over several years. And he brings a global perspective on trends and appreciation of all the conditions that help businesses and communities adopt and benefit from emerging technology. So over to you, Jared.
Thank you. And firstly, thank you, our hosts at ASSOCHAM, Mr. Sood, Mr. Balaji, and Honorable Chief Guest, Chairman TRAI, Dr. Sharma. It really is a pleasure to talk about the next revolution of digital. AT&T has a pretty exciting place at the forefront of tech adoption through our communications business, through Warner Media Entertainment business, and through serving a lot of enterprises across industries that do business in India and globally. We're privileged to play a part in helping technology improve the way that people live, work, and play. As many have said so far, we're living in an unprecedented time where connectivity plays a fundamental role for practically every sector of the economy and for every life. India's National Digital Communication Policy of 2018, we believe, is a great example of the strategic recognition that technology is a key part of connecting, propelling, and securing the future. Examples of technology benefits and responsiveness of government are easy to find right now. When COVID-19 necessitated keeping the country safe and productive, regulators played a key role both in delivering clarity and adaptability so that people could stay connected and working in ways that probably a few years ago we wouldn't have imagined. But I would submit that this probably isn't surprising either, since India's climbed in innovation rankings in the past years. The startup ecosystem is blossoming there, and we've seen mobile penetration and fixed download speeds multiply, while overall data costs have dropped dramatically. So as this has happened and people have shifted to working from home, a lot of these things that have happened in the last decade have come to play to make that support. So what are we seeing now as we look forward? Really, for business and society, we see digitization continuing to reshape global supply chains, research and development, consumer behavior, and everything in between. To start with, 5G networks will drive more resilience, capable security, so that consumers who are expecting mobility, protecting operations, data from theft and destruction will have that facilitated. IoT as well, and the infrastructure that's emerging around it is shaping smarter and intuitive environments in schools, hospitals, and manufacturing. Automation, drones, and robotics are all going to add to this. And at the same time, software-driven networks will help the businesses adapt at the pace of change that's happening right now. And what's also been mentioned earlier is that AI will be playing a driving force in the new technology period, because applications are beginning to permeate different aspects of business and life right now. So we're really seeing a convergence of communications at the center of so much change. Within our own industries in communication and entertainment, we're seeing traditional telecoms interplay with content and streaming services, over-the-top providers, and big tech companies across several platforms in what really now is a global and very diverse market. So you see communications providers offering TV services, like ourselves owning media companies. You can see any number of platforms to text or video call. Social media is really, in India, as much as anywhere in the world, changed the way we communicate. And traditional technology companies are also very active in the voice and video services. Beyond that, across every industry, sectors are competing to develop applications for IoT. This also extends to government. So governance is also adapting and adopting to realize the digital benefits, to support analytics, deeper transparency, greater access to service, and greater speed of delivery. But at the same time, there are a lot of challenges coming forward, both in enforcing digital piracy, protecting people's privacy, deterring, detecting, and stopping other cyber crimes, because we're seeing digital and traditional laws and life co-evolve. We think that developing human-centric policies that apply to AI and to massive computing power are going to be probably some of the biggest and most important challenges that regulators face. And through all of these challenges, we really see a lot of opportunity, and we see a lot of need for collaboration, because when you see connectivity is really now the cornerstone of the coming digital transformation, more connected society that can better use the power of the internet to ensure continuity of business activities, making it easier to start new businesses and to develop new skills. These all come together in a way that it's very important for us that industry and government invest and deploy cutting edge technologies, while at the same time ensuring that it's done so in a way that really focuses on safety and standards. in this environment, communication is much more than connectivity, and communication is really going to be key as we move forward, because we're going to really realize these benefits through a lot of proactive collaboration between policymakers, industries.
Jared, I would request you to wrap up soon.
Certainly, and civil society. So as we see these, we do hope is we have human-centric, accessible, secure, and ethical development of these regulations on emerging technologies. And we think that in doing so, by embracing the next revolution of tech change, will spur growth and help create an industry for products and services that help consumers. And so, as I have the position of being the last one before the Honorable Chairman, before I do yield my time, I'd just like to express thanks to him for his thought leadership and for the hard work of himself and his team, both in his current and previous roles, in assessing, navigating, and really in charting a path for technology to work to the benefit of society. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared, and it's good to see you on a webinar. We last met a couple of years back in the World Congress, along with the chairman himself. So it's my privilege. Hey, I would say it's interesting, Sharma sir, that we have representatives from all the three innovation hubs. Israel, we've covered, US, and of course, India, which is fast emerging as a very vibrant hub for startup. We are really fortunate in ASSOCHAM, sir, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you, because every year that we have requested you to come to our annual event, you've been very kind and benign to us. You shared your perspectives, you've inspired us. Even the NDCP thought process was something that you did kick off in our conference. You are an accomplished technocrat and a bureaucrat. It's a very, very difficult combination to find, if any. You're the father of Aadhaar and the India stack. You kind of framed the JAM Trinity and how it would actually work, and you've been an architect of NDCP. If I would just take a minute or two, because it's been nearly 5 years, and I just look at the end result, because end of the day, that does matter while everything else does count. We've seen probably 100x increase in traffic in the 5 years. In the last 5 years, we've seen a 3x increase in internet users, 4x increase in broadband users. Of course, there's been consolidation of operators. There are 4 operators. There's been an enhanced role for IP1 players. We moved from being spectrum scarce to now spectrum surplus, at least by and large, for up to 4G. 5G has yet to play out. And I remember, sir, your first angst used to be a lot on call drop, but imagine the work that you and the government have done to facilitate the networks, that today in the whole lockdown period, you hardly hear such complaints that it started with. So I must say that we are very grateful from the Digital Communication Committee of ASSOCHAM, as well as representing the entire telecom ecosystem, for your guidance and your nudge for the sector to reach where it has. And so a huge thanks for that. Before handing over to you to share with you to hear from you what you think we need to shape up as a sector going forward, or what words of advice you'll have for us. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Let me unmute myself. So first of all, thank you very much, Balaji, for that very, very generous introduction. And first of all, let me also compliment you for organizing this webinar. You have been very, very active in the ASSOCHAM, digital communication. You are the chairman of that digital communication committee. So that's something I must compliment you for, organizing such discussions and brainstorming, off and on, and it actually reinvigorates, it actually, provides a platform for sharing our thoughts. Similarly, Manoj has, as Secretary General, has also done a commendable work. I heard all of you, in the last 30-40 minutes, and it really has been a very, very pleasant kind of experience, because you have demonstrated the kind of deep understanding you have of the sector, the going forward, what role it has played during these difficult times, and how we should go forward, what are the requirements. So I think it's a very much, I really appreciate your thoughts, and I think that's a very great input for me to going forward. Also, I must thank you in ASSOCHAM to invite me to this discussion and share my thoughts with all of you. So first of all, I completely agree with you that this information and communication technologies, and especially the telecom infrastructure, is going to play an extremely important role in the future to come. You know, imagine, I was thinking that suppose 20 years back, we had such lockdown. Imagine. Now, can you think that we could have sustained it even for a week? Even have sustained it, you know, we have sustained it for 60 days approximately, and we could not have sustained even for a week. I mean, half the population would have gone mad, you know, would have become psychologically sick. Because what has kept us moving is that while we were physically isolated, this telecommunication, you know, enabled us to remain mentally connected. You know, we were able to talk to our loved ones far and wide, get their, you know, sort of how they are. We were able to, you know, watch a lot of, you know, stuff. We are connected through television, through other media. So essentially, this is something which has enabled us to survive this pandemic and this lockdown and this disease thus far. And we have also during these last couple of months realized that there are many things which we were not doing now that we are forced to do. Then we also realize that, look, I don't know why, we do not know why we were not really using them earlier. I mean, the video conferencing meetings on the VC, even the Honorable Prime Minister now has meetings on the video conferencing very often. Everybody is, you know, connected and having the meetings. And in fact, people are realizing that it's very productive actually to have meetings because you don't have to travel and you are able to, you know, organize these things. And we at TRAI had started organizing open house discussions on the video conferencing platforms. And we have done 2 of them, and we are going to have another couple of them in the near future. So essentially, we have realized that there are certain ways of doing things which we were not doing, but now because we are forced to do, they are not really very ineffective or inefficient ways. They are indeed very productive and very you know, good ways of doing things. So I think this pandemic has taught us in a very limited period, taught us that while ICT is very important, it's also possible to leverage ICT to deliver many things. One is also seeing, you know, in various fields, work from home is certainly one of them. Then you see the, you know, education, for example. Education is also happening online and, you know, remotely. Learning is happening. And the most important application which I can find in these difficult times is digital health. You know, the health services delivery, if that can be kind of made onto a digital platform, that will be a great, you know, sort of thing which should happen. And it will also again do many positives. For example, you are afraid to go to the hospital because you think that you will get infection. And if you can get advice of the doctor from home, you can get the medicines delivered at home, you can consult the doctor and you can have the diagnosis done at home. You know, it's so much easy. It's very cost effective. It's very frugal, and it's really scalable, and it reduces that friction in some sense. It is a very frictionless experience one can have. So I think you know, learning, health, courts. You gave the example. Manoj gave the example that, you know, courts are now doing. They want more and more proceedings to take place. So that's also another you know, area. In fact, meetings in this kind of environment become much more disciplined. In the sense that in the courts also, you know, people cry and all the courts cry, and the judge can always put a, you know, mute button, and, you know, you can say, all right, this person is allowed to speak. So you can actually enforce more discipline. Just now Balaji can sort of mute everybody else, saying that, look, you guys just stop, and, you know, I am going to speak. So this is how this is how this thing can become. So I think these meetings or these interactions are much more valuable and much better sometimes than, in many respects, than the physical this thing. Of course, one misses the lunch and all those events which happen after the stuff, but then that's a small price to pay for carrying on our sort of work as we go along. So another thing which we have realized is that that platforms are much more important than applications. You see, in this part, India is a large country. It has, multiple languages, multiple, staff systems, administrations. So therefore, you need to have an interoperable platform. So if you have these platforms, then it's very easy to onboard many kinds of applications and many kinds of systems to connect them interoperably on these platforms. So when I talk of, for example, identity platform we built, India has already done that. We have built a payments platform. We have a JAM, basically which connects all the three things, the financial address, which is the Janadhan accounts, the identity number, which is Aadhaar, and the mobile as a means of communication. So we have a very empowering JAM trinity. We have the payments platform. We can have and we must have the health platform, the agriculture platform, the e-markets, and there are multiple opportunities for us to actually transact our business, transact our things on these digital platforms. And we have shown the way that we have created platforms which are presenceless, which are paperless, and which are very, very authenticated kind of platforms where we have made a digital consent framework. So I think all the pieces which are required, all the horizontal pieces which are required to enable transactions to take place are already built by us. And with the added kind of characteristics that they are interoperable, they are based on open standards, they are based on open APIs, they are frugal, cost effective. So all these things, India has shown the way that we can actually create large scale, scalable platforms which can deliver services. So I think that's a great plus for us. And I think this is the next digital revolution in some sense is going to happen, because maybe in the normal times, there was not much of a push for these platforms because people could always, find better, more sort of usual traditional ways of interfacing and interacting and conducting their transactions. Now I think we are in a way forced to go to these platforms, and then we realize that these platforms are in a way much more better than the physical interactions. Imagine in the UPI, we conducted 1.25 billion transactions per month, just in the month of April and May. I have the data. And these were about 30 billion US dollars in 1 month. And they are very small value transactions, 100 rupees, 200 rupees, a couple of dollars. And you can even conduct 1 rupee transaction and no fees. It's absolutely free. It's absolutely frictionless. Imagine a Western Union bank transferring your money free of cost. Can you think? They charge a hefty percentage of money for transferring money, from one bank to another account to another account. Here you can transfer money from one account to another account at zero cost. In fact, some of the guys give you rewards also for using their platform. So I think what is happening is that the kind of digital infrastructure in terms of software which we have built is amazing. And the layered approach of innovation which we are adopting, which basically means that you don't build one complete solution. You just bring, a component which can be plugged into other solutions, or which provides, solutions, or which provides help to multiple applications. That's the architecture which we have built, and that architecture is going to sustain us, having a layered innovation, layered approach. And as you pointed out, we have a very vibrant ecosystem of startups which are going to flourish. So that's something which is going to happen. The revolution there is going to happen. But let me now come to the point that this revolution cannot happen unless you provide the underlying layer of connectivity. Unless you have a connectivity which is robust, reliable, cost effective, ubiquitous, you just can't have that revolution. That revolution rides on this connectivity. That's also very, very important. So therefore, to have a clear vision, the National Digital Communication Policy 2018 actually provides a very, very clear vision. It has 3 broad areas. One is, connect, which is the digital connectivity. Another is software, which is the empower, which is essentially create softwares on top of it so that this digital connectivity can be put to good use. And lastly, of course, the important part, which is secure, which is, you must ensure that your systems are secure, your data is secure, they respect privacy, they respect security, those other things. Similarly, the Prime Minister's Digital India program also talks of three things. One, as a base layer, digital infrastructure and utility to citizens. It talks of software and services on demand. And lastly, it talks of citizens' empowerment. So I think, again, the policy pieces are in place. The question is, how do you implement and execute this policy? And let me admit that many times we find that we are great at policy, but we are not so great at implementation. And implementations have suffered, implementations have taken time in the past in many areas. And I think that's where we should focus. And that focusing will require how do you make this connectivity very robust? So you already pointed out, some of you already pointed out the E-band, and you pointed out the use of the spectrum for connecting backhaul and stuff like that. So I think one is spectrum. So a spectrum part, this is one is the connecting the towers, backhaul connectivity, which is the E-band and V-band part. Also releasing more spectrum in unlicensed situation to do the Wi-Fi. We have very few Wi-Fi hotspots. France, for example, has got 1.8 million hotspots, and India has got less than 100,000 hotspots, Wi-Fi hotspots. So I think we need to deliver. Ultimately, any digital policy which is not inclusive is not going to give a good result. See, we must include a policy. All policies must be inclusive. We can't, for example, the digital learning which is going to take place, we can't only allow the elite schools to provide online learning to their kids, and the villages in the schools just being, sort of sitting at their place and not learning anything. That will further increase the digital divide. So I think we have to have inclusive policies, and Wi-Fi hotspots in remote rural areas will be one of these steps to ensure that digital connectivity is available to everybody at their reach. So that's one part. We need to release that spectrum for Wi-Fi. We need to release that spectrum for connecting point-to-point connectivity at the backhaul. That's something. Of course, millimeter waves also, 46 gigahertz also needs to be used for IMT services. We have already given recommendations for 3.5 gigahertz and other things. So that's all this. I think, as Balaji pointed out, that up to 4G, there's no dearth of spectrum. But we have even given recommendations of 5G. Of course, TSPs always keep on saying that you have given a very high price, and I sympathize with them, unfortunately or fortunately, but I'm not now. As far as I'm concerned, as they say, horse has left the stable, so it's with the government, and that they will take the necessary steps. But the recommendations are all in place. Now, we have also given other recommendations, which is basically Vani framework to make an interoperable Wi-Fi systems available. We have given recommendations. That's one spectrum part. Second is the services part. So when services, what is the characteristics of India in the digital communication space is that we are very, very short in fixed line connectivity. I mean, India is a peculiar country where you have 1.2 billion mobile connections, and we boast that our mobile networks transport data more than US and China put together, their mobile networks. But we forget many times to mention that we just transport only 6 to 7% data on the fixed line network, compared to the world transporting 46% on the networks. In some countries like US, etc., they are transporting 60% of their data. In fact, nobody uses the mobile phone for data unless they are traveling. It's only due to the travel that you use your mobile phone for getting the data, looking at the news, and probably watching this. India is the only country where mobiles are used for watching films. People are sitting in the field, and it's a credit that we have had 100x kind of data transport through mobile networks. We have used this technology very effectively, but I think going forward, you can't just depend on this technology alone. You need to have a technology which is more robust. And I believe, as Mr. Raina said, the video is going to become the norm. And if video is going to become the norm, you probably need, you can't overload and burden the spectrum using resources like wireless phones to transport the video. I think you should use the fixed lines to transport the video. You should watch video at your home, in your offices. That's fine. But that will require you to actually strengthen your fixed line infrastructure. And that fixed line infrastructure, we have given a number of suggestions to the government. One is use the cable television, infrastructure to sort of ensure that they deliver. In America, for example, the Comcast of the world, they deliver huge, kind of data using their cable, infrastructure. That's what should happen in our country. That recommendation is pending before the government. I hope they are going to take decision on that. Similarly, we have recommended the other things also, that you should enable this Wi-Fi. I told you, right-of-way policy. We have done a policy in 2016, but unfortunately, the policy has not really given the desired results, because I think we need to probably communicate better with the states. Ultimately, the lands are with the states, so there are many recommendations which we have given to ensure to say that, look, we need to have fixed line, more robust connectivity. So that's one. On the policy front, regulation front, as Manoj said, IP players sort of share. I'm sure Manoj is aware of the recommendation which we have given to the government to increase the role of the infrastructure providers. You see, infrastructure providers, which are, a very, very artificial barrier which has been laid, is that, active and passive infrastructure. I mean, this is ridiculous, because we believe that it should be the service or no service as the distinction feature. You should divide the players on the basis of what service they provide. So long as the infrastructure providers are not providing telecommunication services to the people, they should be allowed to put up, whether it is active or passive or whatever it is. So long as they put the wire, so long as the wire is not flowing, the data is not flowing in the wire, it's okay to set up the wire. So therefore, we have recently given a recommendation, very comprehensive recommendation, because we believe that the telecom space must attract new categories of players. It should not just remain limited to telecom service providers who are providing a vertically integrated kind of stuff. They put up the towers, they put up the fiber, they put up the network, they put up the what is called central their systems, and then they provided services to the consumer. We need to have a number of players in between, and we need to actually divide this division of labor on a well thought out principle, so as to improve the effectiveness, so as to improve the investment in the sector. So we think that tower companies, going ahead, and the IP companies, they should play a very proactive role in providing infrastructure for the telecoms services. We have put a lot of emphasis on sharing of this infrastructure. So whether it is fiber, whether it is tower, all these things must be shared, so that that can improve the productivity of these infrastructure and finally reduce the cost to the service providers. We have the concept of VNOs now. So there are, we at a policy front are trying to see that more and more investment comes into sector, and you have various layers. Recently, they are now going to float a paper on how do you unbundle these these layers from a service layer to a network layer to an infrastructure layer. So these are some of the thoughts, and the whole idea is not to reduce somebody's role or somebody to undercut somebody. The idea is, how do you build an ecosystem in a sector where multiple players come and they deliver, they actually, I mean, after all, imagine a restaurant providing food to the people, and then came the logistic companies and they provide, so they have, in a way, the restaurant's part has been taken, and that combination of one logistic provider serving multiple restaurants, and one restaurant can be using the multiple logistic providers. That's what is happening. So I think we need to have that same architecture put in place in this sector too. So that's another at the regulatory and policy front. Policy front, NDCP. Regulatory front, we explained that, sort of dividing these services among various players, spectrum, and other things. And we are committed to keep on working with the telecom service providers and with all the ecosystem. I forgot to mention that I must pay my compliments to all the telecom service providers who have really played a wonderful role. In fact, we in the meeting of TRAI, the authority meeting, we passed a resolution saying that we want to compliment and praise our telecom service providers who have really, kept this country in a way, communicating with each other, and they have played a stellar role. Imagine we have seen a growth of about 50% in the traffic. That is okay. I mean, that's something which can be sort of, one can imagine that, okay, there will be a there'll be a scope of 50%. But what has also happened is that the traffic which was coming largely from the offices has now started coming from residential areas. So there is a huge shift in traffic which has taken place. And that also they have been able to accommodate, they have been able to cater to. And these people have been working, tower people have been working to provide diesel to the towers, fine-tuning the towers. So they have done a heroic work in this pandemic, and I must compliment all of the ecosystem players, whether they are tower service people or telecom service providers or ISPs, who have done a great work in this area. Now, coming back to this issue of 5G part, I believe that in our country, for example, let's take our country, we have created many digital systems which are creating huge amount of data. So we are becoming data rich before we become rich, in a way. So we are going to have this huge data, and that data analytics is going to happen, artificial intelligence on these systems, and we can use AI in delivery of many services, which is already happening, but I think we can do it at a scale. So I think there are a large number of use cases of 5G in our country. And it is not necessary that we should use 5G for remote driving only. I mean, sometimes people just come up with a few used hackneyed cases, saying remote surgery, remote car driving, etc. That's the way they put it. But I don't think India will have its own use cases. And we have a huge opportunity in multiple sectors of IoT, big data, machine-to-machine communication, AI, and also the sectors, health, for example, and other digital service delivery. We will have a scope for 5G and fixed wireless access. So we can actually avoid the last mile fiber by having this 5G at a fixed wireless access. I think we have a number of use cases, and we should go for it. We have already recommended a spectrum auction which is used for 5G. Hopefully the government will make the auction. And I think we should not be laggards in the application, in the kind of, because India has a huge capacity to consume technology. I think we have shown the world that you don't require huge amount of education for people to teach them how to use technology. In today's everybody, even elderly people, senior citizens are using digital payment systems, are using digital, e-commerce systems. They are ordering things online. So it's not as if they are disabled from using it. Once you give them technology, and once they find it useful, they will use it. So I think this pandemic will have, obviously, it has a huge impact. But I think it has shown something to us that there are digital alternatives available to doing things physically, and there are things available which we can do without touching or without this thing that are happening. At an interaction level also, thus far touch has been, first we used to type on the keyboard, then that keyboard replaced the touch, and then now voice is coming, and now facial recognition is coming. So I think more and more contactless interface with the machines is also going to become very, very popular. And this part, for example, UIDAI, I'm told, we were using the payment systems using the fingerprints. Now they are coming up with the facial recognition technology. They are more or less going to launch in a couple of weeks, I'm told. So this is something which is going to accelerate. So these digital things will accelerate in these difficult times, and I am sure that we are going to fully leverage these technologies, and because of the software prowess which we have got, I think we can even help other countries in doing those things. But the most important issue is connectivity, and we need to fix that part, because that's not really, we are not in a great shape as far as connectivity is concerned. And fortunately, today's webinar, you have all the players who can make connectivity happen. You have tower players, you have the long distance players, you have the TSPs, all the ecosystem partners are there. They can make that thing happen. I think the other last issue which I like to touch upon is the domestic manufacturing of telecom equipments, which I think we have already given a recommendation. The government has also come up with the policies. Electronics manufacturing policy is also being, it's also being enriched in some sense. So that's something which is happening. PPDR, someone of you spoke about the first disaster recovery and what is called disaster network, the Public Protection and Disaster Recovery Network, PPDR. That recommendation already we have given to Department of Telecom, and I think you are very right that we need to have a very robust interoperable system, nationwide system of public protection and disaster recovery. That also we are going to, hopefully, Ministry of Home Affairs is working on this to connect all the police and everybody related with the disaster recovery. So that's also going to happen. So I think at a policy front, we must continue to work ahead in consultation with all the players. At the implementation front, we need to work. Fortunately, the recent developments of different kind of players, Google, Facebook, Amazon, showing interest in the telecom, space is also an interesting phenomenon. And I'm sure these guys are also coming, and I'm sure their investments are not without thinking. They must be having some strategic thinking behind them. Of course, I am not able to figure out as to what it is, but maybe we'll have some kind of brainstorming with Balaji and his colleagues to tell us as to why they are investing in the networks. But I think, look, telecom is the everywhere. I mean, on the last note and a little lighter note, every sector is going down, isn't it? Every sector has gone down. There's no sector in this economy which has not seen a huge dip. But talk of the only sector which has grown and which has huge growth potential is telecom. I think that is something which should give us a huge comfort, because we are the only sector which is actually showing a growth. Every other sector is just sort of getting down. So I think that is an indication of the fact that we are going to play an extremely important, all of you guys are going to play an extremely important role in the life and working of the society at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. As always, we don't call you tech guru or a futurist for nothing. You always have an ability to kind of amalgamate a lot of facets. You've added a lot of things to the lexicon of or dictionary of our telecom. The word platform is something we heard from you the first time when you took charge as TRAI, and when you talked about the identity platform or the payment platform, and now you're talking about the opportunity for interoperability, paperless, consent mechanism, presence-less. I think these are words that we at least learned from your past experience in UIDI and IT, and we are richer for it. And of course, there are a lot of questions which have come, sir, but it's interesting that I mentioned you as a tech guru, because there were questions around why do we talk only about wireless? Why don't we talk about Wi-Fi? Why don't we talk about fiber? And in a way, you've covered that question, which was raised by people in the attendees. Some very illustrious people had raised that question. You have addressed that already. There are a series of questions that people asked about E-band, there were a specific thing on whether Israel has any concern on E-band. Hopefully there is none, but we'll probably have Eitan explain that in a minute. I'm just covering a few questions, sir, so that you and the panelists can answer some of them as the final few minutes of the webinar are coming through. So I think they talked about wireless Wi-Fi and fiber as a mix to connect India. You addressed that, so maybe that we will leave out for the moment. They've talked about test labs and the facility to address issues on security, and can that be done in an effective manner in India, because otherwise we are reacting to world situations. They're talking about IPR litigation. That's an area that has been talked about, whether with more and more Atmanirbhar initiatives, will there be IPR litigations which will be coming up in larger quantities. And then there's a question on in-building solutions and what can be done to invigorate it. These are the few questions that were there. I'm leaving out deliberately using the moderator's perspective on things which are work in progress, like there are consultation processes underway, or on pricing that you've already recommended, sir, from your side to governments. Those questions I'm leaving out. There were some questions around that, but I'll leave that out, but focus on the few things in front of us. So maybe we may request you, sir, and then Eitan and the other panelists on test labs, IPR litigation, and how to minimize that, and a couple of those aspects which have come out, which otherwise.
Let me yes. Can I comment?
Yes, sir.
Let me just take one question, which is a very, very important question, which is the in-building solutions. Now, in-building solutions have become extremely, extremely important because people working from home will require robust connectivity. People thought that maybe I'll go to the office and therefrom I'll kind of get the connectivity. But now that they are not going to the office, you need to have. And now more and more urbanization is taking place. More and more people are living in flats and multi-story flats, and we are seeing a huge problem in actually getting connectivity there. Now there are two types of connectivity. One is the connectivity like fiber to home. That's one part. Another is the wireless phone connectivity. So, for example, if I have a mobile phone, I am not able to talk because of the signal not coming. And wireless connectivity, fortunately, now can be addressed for those who have got fiber to home, because now you have Wi-Fi. You can call on Wi-Fi. You can use the Wi-Fi, whichever provider that Wi-Fi provides. You can use that to make a phone call. So to that extent, the signal problem can be reduced. But again, this can be reduced only for those guys who have got fiber at their place. So we have given recommendations, multiple recommendations to ensure that we have the in-building solutions in place. One, the last recommendation which we have given about the fiber, about the tower companies or about the IP1 companies, they should be able to establish the in-building solutions which can be actually used by any of the service providers, because by definition IP1 is not going to give the connectivity to the final thing. So they are there to rent out their infrastructure to service providers. So we have given this part. We have also recommended that the telecom service providers should be prohibited from entering into any of the mutually complete exclusive agreement, saying that okay, I'll provide the infra into this, Airtel will provide infra into this, and Vodafone, Idea, Jio, or BSNL will all not be able to provide. With the result, all the fellows in the multiplex they are not going to be only customers of Airtel. They are going to be customers of all other players. So how do you ensure that everybody gets into those parts? Also, we find a trend that the builders, actually the RWAs, they are charging money from the TSPs to actually allow them to enter into their this thing, which is very, I don't know what kind of system this is. These TSPs are coming there and providing service on a non-discriminatory manner. They are not charging any premium from the guys who are living in these multiplexes. They are providing a service, and they are just saying that, all right, I want to provide you a service. You give me the facility to lay my infra, and you are saying no, you are not allowed. You have to pay this much of money to me. So it's an extremely perverse kind of arrangement which is going on. I don't think anybody will charge for electricity some electricity company saying that you can't bring in electricity unless you pay me money. Nobody is going to charge a water company to say that you can't bring the water pipes to my colony unless you give me pipe. Then why should somebody charge for communication infrastructure? So these are a lot of aberrations which have happened over a period of time. And why they have happened is because somehow we never actually realized that connectivity is as important, if not more, than the water pipes or the electricity or the other kinds of infrastructure, common infrastructure which is required in these things. So these are the aberrations. Now the point is, how do you remove these aberrations? How do you kind of tackle these issues? So we have initiated a number of things. After in building solutions recommendation, we have started a dialogue. In fact, we were supposed to have a conference and seminar with the Ministry of Urban Development, because we want to make connectivity infrastructure as a necessary condition for completion certificate for any multi-story building or multi-story complex. Like you are not given a completion certificate unless you have a fire hazard thing, unless you have electricity, unless you have water supply, unless you have lift inspector, everything. But we don't have any kind of provision thus far to make the provision of the telecom infrastructure inside the building as a precondition for giving the completion certificate. So that's what we are going to do. And I must tell you that the Ministry of Urban Development has been very positive. The secretary there, Mr. Mishra, and all their colleagues have been. So we are going to have this discussion, and we are going to ensure that we incorporate in the National Building Code a chapter, a very separate chapter for prescribing, similar to how you prescribe the electricity architecture and sufficiency. Similarly, we want to do a similar kind of specifications based on either outcomes or on the design as to how they should build the communication infrastructure. That's what we are going to do. I'm very sure we will take care of that problem. And of course, the existing also, if you can have common ducts, you can have other solutions, IP1 can come in, IP1 can provide. This is something which we are going to sort of do it. We also want to take care of this perverse, sort of relationship or perverse thing where people are charging money to provide infra, provide the connectivity, rather than, they should probably give money to the TSPs to say, like, hamare yahan aakar ke you provide the connectivity, but it's the other way around which is happening. So I think we are taking care of it. So I'll stop here. And maybe I have spoken too much actually. I was looking at the watch. I've been there for about half an hour.
No, very fascinating, sir. And I think you started with talking about work from home and the asymmetry of traffic from office to residence, and what your intervention in order to address that going forward basis is fantastic. To get that into the National Building Code is a great idea. We in the industry will be there with you, sir, as you organize that. Wherever you need us.
In fact, Balaji, sorry again, we will actually seek your feedback as to how you perceive the standards to be. Ultimately, you must provide us the thing what is to be incorporated in the National Building Code. So I think we'll come back to you.
We will do that, sir, as ASSOCHAM Digital Communication Committee. Maybe we'll take that as a work stream to make sure that we proactively wait for your guidance when it's required, but we'll start working on that, sir.
Balaji, just a quick one, Mr. Sharma. We at ASSOCHAM also have this building and housing committee where we will also take this, and I have heard talks about this space already, because you see, ultimately this is a facility which is essential, and therefore it is also in the interest of the builder and the buyer, because this is a very important USP for somebody to sell that this building is as per standards, and standardization is something very essential. So thank you very much for this. We will absolutely support this idea, and I will personally also write down to Mr. Mishra that this is the feedback of the industry on this space.
Let me also share, Deepak, one fact with you. We computed the cost of providing an infrastructure which can provide a seamless connectivity to every household in a colony in that thing. It's just about 20 rupees per square feet. 20 rupees per square feet is just very, very insignificant. When buildings are selling at 7,000, 8,000 per square feet, 20 rupees is nothing. And that could be a great USP for the new builder, saying that my building is completely, telecom ready and stuff like that.
Absolutely, sir. I think we will collaborate with the cross-industry forums that ASSOCHAM provides. Is there any comment on the other questions from any of the panelists? If not, then I will just kind of try to conclude. Any comments? Okay, if not, then I would take this opportunity to thank Mr. Sharma again for being the tech guru. He's always trying to stretch the imagination of all of us in the sector. And to all the panelists who've joined from not just from India, but also from across the world, and to all our attendees who've been always a big supporter for our digital initiatives in ASSOCHAM. So thank you once again, and thanks, Mr. Sharma.
Thank you very much, Fred.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.